Good evening. Thank you all for being here tonight at East Bay Mud's Water Wednesday series. My name is Laura Luong. I'm a community affairs rep at East Bay Mud. Tonight we have a very exciting topic, water recycling around the world, and I'll be introducing our expert panel shortly. Before we begin, I want to let you know that tonight's webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website and YouTube channel. Tonight, we will have a presentation and answer questions after the presentation. However, you can ask your questions at any time by typing it in the Q&A box on the panel bar. This is our agenda for tonight. Tonight, we have Ben Glickstein, Director of Communications with Water Reuse Association, to give us the water recycling big picture. Followed by East Bay Mud's Florence Weddington, Senior Civil Engineer, and Rena Thomas, Associate Civil Engineer, to talk about water recycling at East Bay Mud. Last but not least, we have Melody Labella, Resource Recovery Program Manager at Central Contra Costa Sanitary District, to talk about their recycled water program and potential opportunities with East Bay Mud. Right now, I'll hand it to Ben.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. Again, my name is Ben Glickstein. I'm the Director of Communications with the National Water Reuse Association, and I'm excited to be here. Thanks for advancing. So I just want to introduce that, I work for an association. We represent East Bay Mud and a lot of other communities who are interested in water reuse. And in my previous life, I was actually a community affairs representative at East Bay Mud. So this is a fun opportunity for me to come back and be part of this great presentation with some of my former colleagues. So that's fantastic. We can go to the next slide. So I was invited to give the big, broad picture overview of water reuse. So I always like to start with, well, what is water reuse? So this definition says that water reuse or water recycling is water that's used more than once before returning to the water cycle. Now, probably a lot of you all learned about the natural water cycle, starting in elementary school. And that's the natural one that we think of is where water evaporates from some of our surface water bodies, is up in the environment. It comes back down as precipitation, and it maybe also goes down into our groundwater, seeps down into the ground, into our groundwater aquifers, and, as maybe comes back up in natural springs and things like that. But a lot of us also know that on top of that, there is what we often call the built water cycle. That's where humans get involved. And we might say, take that water out of a stream. We might treat it and use it, for example, on irrigation or agriculture, where it then seeps down into the groundwater. Or we might use it in our cities, where it then eventually makes its way to sewers or storm drains, where it's then treated at wastewater facilities and goes back to surface water bodies. So all that's perfectly natural. And the good thing to remember is that all water is recycled water, right? There's no more or less water on Earth than there was at the dawn of time. And that means that when the water goes back into our environment, eventually it comes back to us, whether it evaporates and rains back down, whether we get it out of the groundwater, or whether another community downstream gets the water that we've treated and returned, it's going back to people. And so the only difference with the water reuse we're talking about today is it's the intentional reuse of the water before returning it to that cycle. And we have great technology and ability to do that. So we can go to the next slide. So why reuse water, right? Well, the main reason is when there's too little water, as we've seen a lot in California, when there's drought and water scarcity. This is another source of water that's already right there in your community, easy to use, easy to access. Interestingly, surprisingly, sometimes water reuse is now being used in situations where there's too much water. In some East Coast communities, water recycling at a district scale is being used if there's to deal with sudden intense rainwater, stormwater, flooding, things like that. If you can treat and reuse the water locally, you actually have a better resilience during situations like that. And water quality too. These water recycling technologies are really good at cleaning up all different types of water so it can be used in communities. Next slide. So I thought before I hand it over to my colleagues, I would try to do a little level setting on some terminology that, at least the way I use it. The one kind of recycled water, and this is the kind you'll be hearing about from Florence and Melody and Rena, is non-potable reuse, or recycled water that we're not treating for drinking. Now, we have the technology to treat this kind of water that's completely safe for human contact. So we take the water from our various wastewater streams, we treat it to a level where it's really great to be used for things like irrigation, cleaning and building cooling, toilet flushing. And we also sometimes refer to this water as purple pipe water. That's because while we're making it very clean and safe, we're not turning it into drinking water. And that means we need to keep it separate from our drinking water. So it's often, or it's always in the US, run through pipes that are purple in color so that it's really clear what that water is. Now, the second kind of recycled water we refer to as advanced purification at Water Reuse Association. You may have also heard terms like potable reuse. That's recycled water where we take that first kind we just described, the non-drinking recycled water, we run it through a whole second set of technologies, multiple technologies, and create water that basically is just H2O molecules. I mean, the technology exists and has been proven to treat any level of recycled water, any water to a drinking water quality. So it's out there in the world, and that's sort of another thing to consider for the future. And we always ask, what's the right water for the right use? So the only downside to the advanced purification technology is it can take a ton of energy, it can be expensive to implement. And so when we're thinking about the rates that people are paying or our greenhouse gas impact, you might say, well, if all we really want to do is irrigate or cool a building, then there'd be no reason to use some of those higher level technologies. We can create safe water for one purpose or another. Next slide. So all these different uses, like I said, whether it's non-drinking, drinking, etc., these are being used all around the world. And so, for example, from left to right here, in Melbourne, Australia, this is a huge non-drinking system that exists, just like a lot of systems in the US. But I like this example because they're really maximizing here. They're not using it in their drinking water source, but what they've said instead is for every drop that we can use in other places, that will protect this incredibly limited and rare resource, which is their other sources of drinking water in Australia. And so they use it for irrigation, they use it in car washes. This is actually a pretty rare one, but they even use it in firefighting. So that's the kind of things they're doing. And every time they do something like that, that's a drop of drinking water that's preserved for the rest of the city. Then you've got a project like in Singapore, their Newater project. Now they are using that advanced purification. They're taking that water and they're making water that is safe, will be safe for humans to drink. And in this case, they don't actually then put it into the drinking water system. They use it for mostly industrial cooling buildings, things like that. But they have the ability where they could add it into the reservoir if there's a drought emergency. So they've got some flexibility. And then all of the way over the right, you find a city like Windhoek, the capital of Namibia. They have been purifying water and putting it into their drinking water supply since 1968. And in that case, there's never been a documented public health impact to doing that. I mean, they just have a sterling record and have proven, and we're the first project, now there's others in the world, to prove that really you can treat recycled water for any end use that you might need it for. Next slide. So I just wanted to show a couple of cool projects that are happening around the US with reuse. One is in Orange County. This is one of our older projects in the US where the water is being used in the drinking water system. In Orange County, the way it works is they treat the water and they return it to an aquifer. So they put it into the groundwater. It lives down there, it mixes and blends with the other sources, but eventually does become part of the source that's brought back up through wells and used in the community and the drinking water system. They recently just finished a huge expansion to this project, making it the largest project of its kind in the world. So that's a cool one. And then looking into the future, there are new systems coming online, like in El Paso, Texas, a place that's desperate for new water supplies. El Paso has been doing planning to stay ahead of its water challenges for decades now, and are really leading in that. This new treatment plant that is getting built should be done about 2025, and it too uses advanced purification for drinking. And in this case, it won't send it into the groundwater or a reservoir. It'll make the water very clean, very highly monitored, and then put it into the drinking water systems directly through a series of pipelines. So that's an exciting new project in the US. And finally, just, there's lots of different uses for the water, as I highlighted before. And in terms of some other great non-drinking uses, I wanted to highlight New York and San Francisco. San Francisco is a great example because it's right across the bay, who have kind of taken their own approach. And this is an approach that really focuses more building by building. Because they have these big developments, money going into major new downtown developments, that, they have ways of mandating or incentivizing these buildings to create smaller satellite treatment systems right there in the building or in the set of buildings to treat water. And so you'll be hearing a little bit about some different kinds of satellite plants in East Bay MUD's area, but that's just another cool way that we can recycle water. And those are being used not for, those are being used for cooling, toilet flushing, things like that. And then finally, I'll just leave you with the Water Reuse Association as a place where you can go if you want to learn more about water recycling beyond just all the cool stuff that East Bay MUD is sharing on their website. Come visit us at waterreuse.org. We have a real great compendium of communications materials, fact sheets, videos, education resources for students about water recycling. So I hope you'll come check out and you can do a little more learning and poking around on your own. And that's all for me. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand it off to Florence Weddington, the senior civil engineer who leads East Bay MUD's water recycling program, to tell you a little more about what's going on in the community.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. I just want to start off and just tell you a little bit about East Bay MUD's water supply system. East Bay MUD serves water to over 1.4 million customers, and our supply comes from three main sources. 90% of our water comes from the Sierra Nevada, where it's stored in both our Pardee and Comanche reservoirs. And the water is then conveyed to the East Bay through our McCullamy aqueducts, which consist of about 3 pipelines that are 85 miles long. And they bring that water to the East Bay, where it's stored in 5 local reservoirs, and we have 6 treatment plants that treat that water. In addition to the 90% that's coming from the Sierra, 10% of our East Bay water supply is local runoff. And then in dry years, when we need supplemental supplies, we're able to activate our Freeport Regional Water Facility, where we take Sacramento River water and we add it to our aqueducts. Next slide, please. So our long-term water supply strategy is focused on continuing to build a diverse, resilient, and sustainable water supply portfolio. And, we need to think and plan ahead for uncertainty for things like climate change and droughts. And we do that by diversifying in the ways that you see in the different colored oval shapes on the right side of the slide. So we first of all, we need to maintain our current conservation levels and expand them. So our goal is to conserve 70 million gallons per day by the year 2050. And then in addition to that, we want to maintain our current water entitlements, our water rights. And then we're also going to continue to develop regional partnerships and water transfer agreements. And we recently joined the formation of the Los Forteros Expansion Joint Partners Authority. And that's another way that we are able to, think forward and be able to partner with other agencies in the Bay Area to provide reliability. And then we also want to continue sustainable groundwater management and stewardship, such as through the development of the East Bay Plain Groundwater Sustainability Plan as well as one of our San Joaquin County projects, which is the Demonstration Recharge Extraction and Aquifer Management Project, also known as our DREAM project. And then finally, part of our portfolio includes recycled water. So we can further expand our recycled water program with our existing projects as well as developing new projects. And so I'm going to turn it over here to Rena Thomas. She's an associate civil engineer in our Office of Water Recycling, and she'll tell you more specifics about East Bay Mud's recycled water program.
Thanks, Florence. So over the next few slides, I'm going to present an overview of the district's existing recycled water program. I'm going to highlight some of the challenges and opportunities that we've had in operating and expanding our system. Currently, we have 5 non-potable recycled water projects in place as part of our water portfolio. These include the East Bayshore Recycled Water Project, San Leandro, the San Ramon Valley Recycled Water Program, the North Richmond Water Reclamation that provides cooling tower water supplies for Chevron, and the Richmond Advanced Recycled Water Expansion, or RARE project, that provides boiler feed water for Chevron. We have a current capacity to treat up to 9 million gallons per day of recycled water, and that saves enough drinking water to supply the indoor needs of approximately 180,000 people within our service area. The district has set a goal to expand our recycled water system to be able to provide 20 million gallons of recycled water by the year 2040. So we are almost halfway to that goal. More than 80% of our current recycled water serves the Chevron refinery. And that's because by targeting our recycled water infrastructure to customers such as large industrial users like Chevron and large landscape irrigators like parks and schoolyards and golf courses, we're able to impact the communities at large. When we reach our goal of 20 million gallons per day of recycled water, we can save drinking water resources for about 400,000 people. Because every gallon of recycled water that's used by any recycled water customer is going to free up an equivalent amount of drinking water that can be used to meet potable water needs anywhere within the East Bay Mud service area. And this is especially critical during the times of drought when our drinking water supplies might be impacted. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. One notable thing to recognize is that while the district's water service area is really large and is about 332 square miles across Contra Costa and Alameda counties, our wastewater service area really includes about 88 square miles right along the bay's east shore. Our East Bayshore Recycled Water Project that's located in Oakland is the district's single East Bay Mud only recycled water project. For the other recycled water projects that are outside of East Bay Mud's wastewater treatment service area, the district has to partner with other sanitation agencies. We partner with the City of San Leandro to serve customers that are near the Oakland Airport. We partner with West County Wastewater District to supply Chevron. And we partner with Dublin San Ramon Services District for the San Ramon Valley Recycled Water Program. You go to the next slide. The East Bayshore Recycled Water Project currently serves portions of Emeryville and Oakland, and we plan to expand that to serve portions of Berkeley, Albany, and Alameda in the future. After the initial operations of this system, serving irrigation and interior uses like cooling towers and toilet flushing, we found that the quality of the recycled water, while it meets all regulatory requirements, it's higher in salts and ammonia and not as compatible with the existing building plumbing for the interior uses. And additionally, expansion is kind of difficult in this area because the customer demands for landscape irrigation in these cooler areas that are right by the bay are low. There's just not a lot of irrigation demand there. And the construction costs are also higher in this area because it's already constrained with traffic and existing utilities. So the district has been performing some pilot testing at the treatment plant to determine some suitable treatment alternatives so that we can try to improve the water quality to lower that salt and ammonia content in the recycled water to make it more compatible with interior plumbing so that we can increase our customer base. On the other side of the hills, the San Ramon Valley Recycled Water Project that serves customers in the city of San Ramon has had a lot of recycled demand, so much so that we actually don't have enough recycled water supply to keep up with those anticipated demands. We've connected about 77 customers so far in this area, but we can't add any other further connections until we get some additional recycled water supplies. So we're coordinating with our partner agencies to look at some supplemental supply development so that we can further expand this program to more areas of San Ramon and Danville. We've diverted wastewater from an adjacent agency to supply wastewater to the treatment plant. And in the long term, we're looking at more diversions, continued collaboration with other agencies, and increasing storage just within the distribution system. As I mentioned previously, our largest recycled water customer is Chevron, that's served from those 2 treatment plants up in Richmond. We are also evaluating opportunities for future expansion with the refinery. And this project is a really good example of a public-private partnership where the project was funded by the refinery and benefits the entire district community. Get the next slide. We also have a recycled water fill station located outside of our wastewater treatment plant in Oakland that provides free recycled water for commercial customers. The commercial customers have to complete a training and a permit application before they can access the fill station. Our future planned projects include providing recycled water to the Phillips 66 refinery in Rodeo. The refinery is currently changing from a crude oil refinery to producing renewable diesel. And in line with that renewable aspect of that project, they anticipate to switch to recycled water by 2030. In addition, because many of the large irrigators like golf courses are far away from each other and far from our existing centralized recycled water treatment and distribution pipelines, we're also exploring the concept of package treatment plants at those user sites or on-site satellite recycled water treatment facilities that would be funded by the customer to produce irrigation water for their golf courses to reduce their reliance on potable water. We've also partnered with the Central Contra Costa Sanitary District to evaluate the feasibility of other recycled water projects between our agencies. We have Melody Labella here from Central San with us this evening, who will go into some further detail on this partnership in a few minutes. Our recycled water strategic plan update is scheduled to be completed in 2024. It's going to take a look and an evaluation of what our current recycled water program is, our goals, and then take a look at potable reuse as we take a look at how advanced treatment programs in the state are progressing, how the current regulatory landscape lies, and how our other district water supply levels are doing. As Ben mentioned previously, potable reuse or advanced treatment projects are in place or in progress throughout California and the world. And our strategic plan report will also evaluate alternatives and the feasibility for this resource for the district. So that concludes my presentation for this evening. I'm going to hand things over to Melody Labella, the Resource Recovery Manager at Central Contra Costa Sanitary District. We'll speak about recycled water in their service area.
Thanks, Rena. So happy to be here this evening. Next slide, please. So about Central San, we're a special district with a mission to collect and treat wastewater from a 146 square mile area that you can see here to the left. And we actually overlap with East Bay Mud. So more than half of our wastewater customers are East Bay Mud drinking water customers. So when we say our customers, we have a lot in common. And so I like to think about that as we look at doing our job and protecting our water resources. Central San has over 1,500 miles of sewer collection pipelines that bring all that wastewater to our main wastewater treatment plant in Martinez that is rated to treat 53.8 million gallons every day. We serve about 500,000 residents and more than 3,000 businesses. And in the dry weather months in 2022, we received an average of 34 million gallons every day. So what that means is all year round, we get at least 34 million gallons of water that could be leveraged and used for something more than just discharging it safely back into the San Francisco Bay system. We have some other services that you may be aware of if you're one of our customers as well. We have a household hazardous waste collection program. And then, of course, the reason that I'm here tonight is we do have a small recycled water program where we only recycle about 5% of all that water that we get in. Next slide. So I want to tell you a little bit about Central San's program. Back in the mid-90s, we executed an agreement with Contra Costa Water District. They're another water district that we overlap with and share customers with. They are very close to where our treatment plant is, and so they were a natural first partner with us. We signed this agreement with them that allowed us to distribute recycled water in this particular area as shown on this map. Next click, please. And since that time, over the last couple of decades, we have invested in and built a network of 15 miles of purple pipeline to distribute recycled water, predominantly for landscape irrigation uses. So we're only treating it to that standard that's required for landscape irrigation, not treating it as far as drinking water. So we're not wasting energy. Next slide. And so with that, we've done everything we can within that area. We've served golf courses. We have a 1.5 that we serve of those. Next slide. We serve a junior college, Diablo Valley College in Pleasant Hill. Next slide. We serve several schools in the Mount Diablo Unified School District. Again, this is ball fields, landscape irrigation. We also serve parks. And then our most recent significant expansion, next slide, was into the Concord area. And if any of you have ever visited the Willows or the Verandas, a big shopping center there now, and that's where we brought recycled water out into that area. Next slide. Our latest customer is the Pleasant Hill Library, and again, using it outside for landscape irrigation. Next slide. Some of our customers, like Diablo Valley College, have brought it inside the building for toilet and urinal flushing. What a perfect use for recycled water, not wasting drinking water for that. Next slide. Central San followed suit, and when we did our seismic upgrade of our headquarters building, while we had the building all torn up, we brought in purple pipelines inside to also add toilet and urinal flushing in our headquarters building. Next slide. Like East Bay Mud, we've also started a commercial truck fill program. We offer the first 100,000 gallons of recycle free of charge to incentivize this use. And we have a couple of different ways that we distribute it. We have an overhead fill station right near our treatment plant. And then we have a few purple hydrants, and we issue these purple meters you see here to encourage the contractors to use it for construction activities such as dust control, soil compaction, and plant establishment. Again, all things that let's save our drinking water for better purposes. Next slide. We also started in the 2015 drought a residential fill station program, which we're able to do because we have our household hazardous waste collection facility, and it already had staff there serving customers. And so this was an easy addition for us that we can then keep going. A lot of agencies started these with a really bad drought, but weren't able to continue them. We're sort of unique at Central San, and we're able to continue offering this service to our customers. After completing an application in a short training class, customers of Central San can take up to 300 gallons of recycled water and use it to hand water their lawns, landscaping, or their gardens. Next slide. And we've done all we can within our area that we're approved to distribute recycled water. Water and wastewater agencies have to work together to, develop projects like this. And so we've done what we can within that area. And now, we are looking further. How can we stretch our water resources and bring that value back to our community? And so this is one of the partnerships that Rena mentioned that Central San has been involved in. Click forward, please. This is the temporary wastewater diversion project in which Central San diverts some of our wastewater on a temporary basis to Dublin San Ramon Services District, who has a partnership with East Bay Mud, and they provide this recycled water out in the valley area. And of course, this is to East Bay Mud customers in San Ramon, the San Ramon Valley Recycled Water Program. So we've had an existing interconnection between our two systems. And next slide. We just had to change it. The existing connection was for emergency situations. We needed to modify it so that when we decided to divert this wastewater, that we would be able to control that and make it happen. So after some planning and design of, how do we make this happen? The project went out to bid. Next slide. And it went to construction, and this is what it looks like. It's a big vault, basically, that allows the diversion of wastewater. And so this, can potentially stretch some more of the water resources, allow for the production of additional recycled water that then could come back into East Bay Mud's service area that is also Central Sands service area. And again, this would be for landscape irrigation. Next slide. In terms of looking to the future, in terms of our recycled water planning efforts at Central San. Next slide. Among them, and this is one we're very excited about, is this memorandum of understanding that we have with East Bay Mud to evaluate the feasibility of a range of potential recycled water project concepts, from expanded raw water diversions that you just heard about, all the way up to and including the potential for potable reuse or introducing recycled water into the drinking supply. Next slide. Back in 2016, Central San did a study on wholesale opportunities for recycled water. Where could we partner? Who could we partner with? What kind of projects could we do that really would take advantage of the potential supply of water that we have? As I mentioned, 34 million gallons every day in 2022 we had it, right within our treatment plant. So what you're looking at is a map that shows, this is Central Sands service area and part of East Bay Mud as well. The yellow star is Central Sands treatment plant in Martinez. And if you would go ahead and click twice. Perfect. And what you just saw show up there in the green is East Bay Mud's facilities. So this is the McCollum Aqueduct that was talked about in Rena's and Florence's presentations. It actually comes within 2 miles of Central Sands treatment plant. And so this was one of the most interesting findings of this study, is that Central Sands treatment plant is upstream of all of East Bay Mud's water treatment plants and water reservoirs. So, might it work that Central San could produce highly treated recycled water, inject it into the McCollum Aqueduct system, and distribute it into East Bay Mud system for further treatment and distribution to its customers? And some people get a little leery when they hear about this concept of, wow, drinking, turning wastewater into drinking water. But next slide, I just want to assure you all that our NASA program, from day one that we've been sending shuttles up and into the atmosphere, they have always been using this technology. They don't bring extra water with them. They reuse everything as part of their shuttle missions. And so this technology has existed for many, many decades. The trick has been to just bring it up to full scale and make sure that we do it in a way that keeps it safe for the public. Next slide. So I'd like to leave my presentations with something for people to take action on in sort of in a reachable way, because not everybody can get recycled water. We don't bring it to individual residents because it's very cost prohibitive to do that. But I like to tell people some ideas for what you can do every day to support recycled water. And that is, click forward, please. Start looking at your toilet and your indoor drain as a recycling bin, because this is, for many agencies and many communities, becomes the source water to water that's going to get used again. Click forward, please. Thank you. So what can you do? Only flush the 3 Ps, that's pee, poop, and toilet paper. That's what our systems were designed to treat. And so don't flush these items, such as toxic products like paints and herbicides. Those are things that you can take to a household hazardous waste collection facility. Medications, don't flush those. Wipes, even if they say flushable, wipes can cause clogs and backups and overflows, and then we lose that water supply that otherwise we might be able to recycle. Tampon and tampon applicators. Tampons are also they're not dispersible within the time frames of wastewater treatment. And as well, condoms. Lastly, avoid flea and tick spot on products. This was a big eye opener for me and many others, so I really like to share this one as my final thought. Next slide. So for those of you that have a pet, you may be aware of these spot on products that you put between the shoulder blades of your cat or your dog. And so what I'm going to show you next is some photographs from a research study that was conducted to look at the fate and the transport of these products after we put them on our pets. So what you're going to see is an image of a dog that's under a black light. And in that spot on product, what's been put in there is a phosphorescent dye so that it will glow under a black light. So as you can see, the dog's head is to the top of the photo there. And that little spot is that spot flea and tick product. And so this is right at the application point. And then if you'd click once, please, Laura, this now you can see 5 hours later and then a full 24 hours later, it's continuing to spread. And then one more click, please. And now if you have a petting session with your dog or your cat, it's ending up all over your hands. Where are you going to go next? You're going to go wash your hands. That's going to end up down the drain. Anywhere that our pet touches in our home is going to get pesticides on it, right? And any of those materials that get washed or rinsed down the drain is then going to get into the wastewater. So the better use in terms of water quality, environmental protection, is they actually have oral pills that your pet can take to help prevent and protect them against fleas and ticks. So with that, I would be, along with the team, happy to answer any questions, and I'll turn it back to Laura. Thank you.
Thank you, Melody. That was eye opener for me, for sure. So right now we're going to go into the Q&A. I'm going to start with the questions that you guys some of you have already typed in. Again, if you have any questions, go look for the panel, and in the Q&A box, type in the question you have there. And if you think of any other questions at any time after tonight, you could email it to waterwednesday@ebmud.com. All right, I'll stop sharing. All right, I'm going to dive right into the questions. You guys were busy. Let's see. The first question we have is, I understand that desalination plants can be built for $1.1 billion as one or more recent projects in Southern California. The state is wasting over $100 billion on a train to nowhere, but why haven't they embarked on a plan to become water independent and build maybe 10 or more desal plants along the whole coast? How much additional drinking or potable water could that type of project produce? I think each of our agency kind of knows the answer. Who would like to take that one, the first question on? Let's see. Oops. Is it Ben who's unmuted? Okay.
I mean, I can speak to it a little bit. I'm not sure if I can answer the whole question. I certainly am not an expert on what's going on with high-speed rail, but in general, yes, there are, as I understand it, desalination plants, some that are being developed along the California coast, especially sort of in the Central Coast area, and they are in some ways comparable to water recycling projects. A lot of the times it's a similar kind of technology that you might need. The reverse osmosis technology is a common one to either create desalinated water or to create potable recycled water. And so at a high level, those can be like pretty similar in terms of projects you might install. Of course, there's lots of differences too between them, and which could include in many cases, it's cheaper to do the potable reuse project because you already have that water partially treated and in a very usable location, which is at your wastewater treatment plant, versus it coming in as salty water that you need to create intakes for and then treating it. So often those potable reuse projects compare favorably in terms of cost. And it's certainly, if we're talking about non-potable reuse, treating water for irrigation and stuff like that, that's going to be cheaper as a water reuse project than a desalination project. But I can't answer the question as to the state's priorities in terms of funding, but I think we're all, a lot of enthusiasm from Water Reuse Association about all sorts of new water supply projects of every kind that are being proposed, including some of these desal projects. Yeah.
I can also add, East Bay Mud had actually done a previous Water Wednesday series on the desal topic. So if you go to our YouTube channel at EBMUD and do a quick search for Water Wednesday desal, you could watch that episode there.
I would just add just very briefly that the technology is actually fairly similar between recycled water and desal, but because desal water, right, comes typically from the ocean, it's got a lot of salt in it. And so it actually takes a lot more energy to remove that salt from the water than in most recycled water projects would. So in the end, I think they end up being cheaper to do recycled water than it would be to do desal. But many believe that there is a place for all these kinds of projects. It just depends on what's going on in the particular community and the alternatives that they have.
Thank you. The next question, is there any way that residential users can get non-potable water for using on lawns and in gardens? This was actually asked before Melody hopped on. So if you are in the Central San service area, you are able to participate in the residential recycled water program and get recycled water there to water your lawns or gardens. Okay. Sorry. Why use water that has purified for drinking purposes that don't require water that purified? Sorry, I don't understand that one. Why
I
use
think, is that asking why would we use that highly treated advanced potable reuse water for purposes that don't need it? And I think a couple of the presentations, including Melody's and Rena's, I might answer that really well, which is we shouldn't, right? We actually think very seriously in all of these service areas about treating the water only to the level that's needed for its use. So I think that's a great question. Did anyone have anything else to add to that?
I think you answered it perfectly. I think the goal is to use the right water for the right use. And I think that's what we're trying to do with our programs.
Thank you. This question is for Ben. Has water reuse presented to all Bay Area entities? Is that the plan?
That's a great question. Yes, Water Reuse Association has a number of members in the Bay Area. SFPUC also is very involved in Water Use Association. Central San and others have definitely been engaged and including been in leadership positions. So I would say that probably all of the Bay Area water districts, at least, are very aware and we're in communication with them.
Thank you. Could firefighting plumbing, which is already well distributed, be used to help distribute reclaimed water? Does firefighting water need to be potable? Yes.
So I think recycled water can be used for firefighting. I think one of the issues that can come up that cause difficulties is there needs to be a redundancy standard met for using, any kind of water for fire, because you want to make sure that it's reliable. So I know for Central San's case, our system isn't looped. And so we don't meet the redundancy requirements for firefighting use. But, if that redundancy and production level exists that meet the requirements for firefighting, then I think it can be. And I don't know, Florence, if East Bay Mud has any of those kinds of uses?
We don't currently use recycled water for firefighting, and our recycled water systems are operated currently differently from our potable water systems. In our potable water reservoirs, we allow storage for uses such as that. Whereas in our recycled water system, it's we don't have that extra storage for firefighting. The reservoirs are filled and they're drawn down every day for the irrigation or cooling tower use that they were designed for. So at this time, we don't have that capability. But yes, that water could technically be used for firefighting if necessary.
Let's see, the next one is for East Bay Mud. Does East Bay Mud, when East Bay Mud does sewer or water line work that requires removing roadway or significant trenching, is it adding any purple pipe infrastructure? I think that's a very good question.
So I can just add a little bit to that. Usually when we are installing our recycled water pipeline, we have locations where we know that it needs to be installed. So we don't typically install it when we're doing like roadway repairs or trenching, but when we have new developments, we know that we're going to serve them with recycled water, we will install them along with the potable water lines at the same time. So we have a couple of locations within our service area where we have done that. One is in the Alamo Creek area, and then I believe also in Alameda area, we did it as part of new development. But we do try to, when we know that there is construction that's being done, we try to partner with other agencies to install recycled water pipes as part of their construction. We just recently finished a collaboration with Caltrans and Alameda County Transit Commission, where they installed a portion of our recycled water pipe as their improvements in the Gilman interchange area in Berkeley. So we do try to collaborate when we can so that we can be efficient in our facilities.
And is an entirely separate water distribution system required to get recycled water to customers, whether they be industrial like Chevron or municipal like golf courses? If so, how big of a impediment is this to the broader adoption of recycled water systems?
Oops, I can take that one again. So yes, the recycled water distribution system is entirely separate from any potable water systems. And it can be challenging. I think Rena touched on this a little bit in terms of our East Bay Shore project. It can be challenging when you are trying to install new infrastructure in areas that are, there's dense traffic and a lot of utilities within the roadway already. That adds challenges. But when you are installing them in areas that where there's not so much infrastructure already in the road, then it's not as hard to move forward with those projects. But yeah, that's they are definitely two separate systems. And yes, there can be challenges with installing the new infrastructure.
So I just wanted to add that I know I've heard some agency ranges on those costs for extending the purple pipelines. Anywhere from $1 million to $2.5 million per mile is what I've heard. So it's a substantial cost. This is another reason that a lot of communities are looking to potable reuse, is that you avoid that purple pipeline distribution system and you're able to go right into the existing water distribution system because you're essentially treating the recycled water to drinking water standards. And so you save on that cost and instead invest it into greater treatment technologies.
Thank you. I think we kind of touched about, do the different recycled water projects get treated to different standards? And I think yes, because we want to treat it for the right use. So, um, thank you. And what happens to wildlife? What happens if wildlife drinks the recycled water?
Again, it probably depends on the level of what that water is treated to. As we mentioned, there's all these different treatment levels, but all the recycled water used in any system is safe for human contact, and is probably safe for most wildlife contact as well. But another important point is that there's very few points at which wildlife would be in contact with enough of this stuff to drink it, right? Because it's all protected in the pipelines, and then it's used, at an end use, like a sprinkler system. But those systems are very carefully monitored, especially once they're on recycled water, to ensure that there's not leaks and breaks and puddling and things like that. So, I think there aren't a lot of cases where wildlife would come in contact with it, and I don't think it would present for the levels that it's getting treated to in the state of California. I don't think it would present significant risks. I don't know if folks who are on the ground with systems in California have anything to add to that.
Go ahead, Melody.
I saw you both
Oh,
unmute at the same time.
I think you did well, Ben. And I would just say that, when I first started learning about recycled water, the analogy that was given to me is it's the quality that we're talking about for irrigation, right? It's kind of like thinking about swimming pool water. Do I necessarily want to dip a glass in and go ahead and take a big drink? Probably not. But if I gulp it accidentally, one time, no, it's the odds are there's not going to be any harm whatsoever for people or for wildlife. So I just wanted to add that. Sorry, go.
Yeah, I just also wanted to add that we are restricted on discharging the recycled water to any creeks or open waters. That is part of our permit. So we do need to notify if there is a recycled water spill that might get into a creek. Our staff is trained in making sure that the storm drains are protected if there is a leak, because recycled water that's typically used in our non-potable system has a bit of a higher chlorine level, and so we don't want any fish or wildlife in the creeks to be affected by that higher chlorine level. So in that case, we do protect any creek discharges. So that's part of our permits.
Okay, thank you. How do you consider desal versus potable water recycling to create resiliency for the East Bay? Which is cheaper and which is better for the environment? That's another good question on questions on desal. I think the prices, I guess the cost, I would say depend on the project. And Melody mentioned for desal, the energy cost is much higher. And as Florence and Rena mentioned, we do, East Bay Mud does these master plan updates and studies to kind of evaluate the costs and see what makes sense for us to do and to move forward on. Anything else to add? On to the next one. Is there any city in California that treats recycled water to such a high level that is potable? Are there any legal or regulatory barriers to potable water recycling? How can public attitudes be addressed to encourage potable reuse? I think Ben could touch on it. He had an example about Orange County, and is there any other ones you want to bring up?
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of projects in California already. I presented, some of those examples in Southern California, but there are a number more. You can actually find a map of all the potable reuse projects that are taking place worldwide on our website if you want to check it out. But there are a number in the state of California, and right now they're all using one of those methods that I described where they treat the water to this very clean standard that you could drink a glass of as is, but then they use what's called an indirect system. So they're putting it into a reservoir or into the groundwater or something like that, and kind of letting it blend with the other drinking water sources first. But it's in sort of interesting news. The state of California is actually right now working on some regulations. I'm not really the expert in them, so don't ask me follow-up questions, but that say that by the end of this year, there should be additional rulemaking in place that would actually allow for projects like the one I described in El Paso and like the one I described in Namibia, where the water doesn't necessarily kind of get blended into an environmental source, but gets treated very safely and then put right back into the sort of built water system. And so to answer the question, there are some regulatory limitations right now in California for some of those kinds of projects, but the state is, and a lot of the agencies are really investigating those right now and figuring out, well, how can we make it safe to do an even broader range of advanced purification projects?
And I would just add, there's a couple of different ways to do potable reuse projects. One that Ben featured in his presentation is Orange County, who operates the largest groundwater replenishment system currently in the world. They are injecting that into the groundwater where the basin where it resides for about 6 months, and then it's pulled into drinking water plants through wells, as Ben talked about. Right now, Florence and I coincidentally last month went to visit a plant tour for a direct potable reuse facility with, this would be the most advanced in the state, and it's down in the city of San Diego. So they are leading the way for this, and they are very much doing a type of project that Ben is referring to with the regulations that are currently in draft form right now for direct potable reuse that are due by the end of the calendar year. So this is becoming more and more prevalent. It's sort of becoming the norm down in Southern California. And of course, it's slowly, I would say, moving up the coast, with the closest project to us being down in the Monterey area that operates one of those potable reuse type projects.
Okay, thank you. See, we are we just passed and we'll go for, we'll do a few more. See, has Central San talked to PBF Martinez Refinery about sending them reclaimed water? They are a big water user and close by.
Yeah, great question. We've been studying serving the refineries in Martinez probably for about 50 years. It's something that Central San has been very interested in for a long time. And actually, as part of our MOU with East Bay Mud, we're looking at that concept that what if we serve PBF and Marathon refineries in Martinez with our recycled water? They're right by our treatment plant. And then that current supply that they're using is raw water from the Delta. What if that water can be freed up and somehow transferred to East Bay Mud for a water supply benefit? So that's one that East Bay Mud as well is considering.
Yeah. Let's see. And there's a suggestion for Melody, if you would do outreach to the cat and dog community, especially shelters and rescue groups about the flea product issue. That was something that was really new to one of our audience members.
Thank you. There is an effort of the Bay Area Wastewater Agencies have an association called BACWA, and it is one of its groups that works on pollution prevention has been working with the veterinary associations, trying to work with them hand in hand to get this information out and in a way that our public can find out about it and make different choices if that's important to you. I know it was for me, and I shifted, away from those spot-on products.
Thank you. Given the need to reduce nutrient loading into San Francisco Bay from wastewater treatment plants, do the economics of treatment to potable standards look better? Let's see.
Oh, I think maybe Melody might chime in a little bit on this, because the nutrients thing affects your treatment plant specifically, and then I can add on.
Yeah, sure. So yes, the answer, great question. And yes, absolutely. For Central San, what we're looking at is we know that at some point in the near future, we're going to have to add additional treatment to reduce our discharge of nitrogen to San Francisco Bay. And so that's part of the reason we really are excited to work with our water agencies like East Bay Mud to say, hey, we're going to be cleaning up our wastewater even more than we've been doing. Is there a way we can work together to leverage that and produce even higher quality water that could be used to augment our community's supply? So absolutely, we see this as an opportunity, and we're trying to make the best out of it that we can. Thanks.
So yeah, the nutrient loading will also impact East Bay Med's wastewater treatment plant as well. So, we're looking at many different opportunities to be able to see if we can take advantage of that and supplement our water supply. We're looking at it, studying it, seeing if that's a possibility for us as well.
Okay, thank you. And this one is for East Bay Mud. Can the stormwater facility near Costco on Central in Richmond be converted into a satellite wastewater plant for then producing reclaimed water at a different location other than the Oakland plant?
So I'm not sure that I'll answer this exactly the way that they're asking it, but so stormwater is treated differently than wastewater. So what we're doing is trying to recycle the wastewater, and we are doing a study right now, or we're in the process of moving forward with a study that would look at different ways that we could provide recycled water up to that area. Maybe not exactly where Costco is, but going up farther north towards Richmond to provide additional recycled water to that area. And we would use a supply that's not coming directly out of Oakland, but we would intercept it farther north so that we can treat it and then send it going up towards Richmond.
Okay. So this is gonna be our last question. Do the two agencies remove microplastics before recycled water is distributed?
So I'll just answer for, we have different treatment plants that treat at different levels. And our facilities that use microfilters like microfiltration or reverse osmosis, they are able to remove the microplastics from the water that's being produced. Our facilities that have sand filters can remove some of it, but I don't think all of it is being removed from the sand filter facilities. Melody, maybe you can answer for your facility.
Yeah, kind of the same. It's the challenge of microplastics, and this kind of emerging issue is that, things like plastic that can float in the water are not great for wastewater treatment plants. Definitely better odds at getting it out with these physical filtration systems that happen in water treatment, recycled water treatment. But, I think in a lot of ways, we're still learning about this topic and where we're at and what works, what doesn't. I think there's a lot of research going on right now about microplastics. And, my thing with that is we need to look upstream as well and figure out how we can stop microplastics from coming into our wastewater in the first place, rather than spending a lot more money on new treatment, which is then going to, perhaps impact our customer rates. So that's always what I like to do, is what can we change upstream? But being mindful of, what can we do? And we want to, of course, keep the public safe. So, it's a balance of all those, and something that I know our industry is looking at very carefully and participating in research on.
All right, so that's our last question. If you have any other questions now or down the line, please email them to waterwednesday@ebmud.com. Even if you have questions for our guests tonight, I could certainly reach out to them and get the answer for you. So again, thank you, Ben Glickstein from Water Reuse, Florence Warrington, East Bay Mud, Rena Thomas, East Bay Mud, and Melody LaBella, Central Sand, for being here tonight and just answering all these questions and a wonderful presentation. And a special thank you to Rolando, who's in the background helping me answer some of the questions as we go. So again, thank you. This will be, this is recorded and it will be posted to East Bay Mud's YouTube channel in about a week. So feel free to check back again and watch it and share it with everyone. So with that, have a good night. Thank you so much.